Oh, Jack, can you close the door for me? Can you close this door for me so I'm not distracted by the cockroaches? Hello. Koleka, I'll place you in just now. As soon as we have a few more people. Ah, what the heck? Let me bring you in so that we can drink our wine together.
Hola.
Hey.
Hi.
How
Let
are
me
you?
check.
Father of my
Good.
child?
I'm good.
Okay.
Ndakate. Unjani?
Sharp. Now, Bessie, the headscarf is in honor of the guy who had the issue of Duke today. So yes, Resident Troll Remy. Yeah. And the shirt I got from a publisher in Liberia.
Oh, look at you.
Yeah.
How have you been? How have you been doing?
We've been doing great. Thank you. How have you been? How are you surviving Wuhan, Africa?
Well, I haven't been in Wuhan. I've been in Johannesburg. I only
Okay.
arrived in Wuhan 2 days ago. So, and
Did
I'm
you
already
fly?
shook. I did fly. I flew during these times.
Yeah. Risky.
We are brave, ne?
What are you drinking in there? Like that looks like those 7-day teacups, you know? Where you put a
I'm drinking.
in it.
No, I'm drinking two things. I'm drinking water and I'm having whiskey.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
for balance.
Jesus said water into whiskey. So, right. Let's see. Have a couple. Shall we wait until we have like from about 15, 20 and then we get on it? Okay.
Yeah, bo.
So otherwise, what were you doing in Joburg? Are you like living halfway there now, or what's the story?
I'm like living in Cape Town, but I just, when lockdown happened, I found myself in Joburg, and then fucked off to Mpumalanga for the 5 weeks that we were on lockdown. Because, a couple of us did not want to be stuck in the city. And then that's what we did.
You did say you were going to be in Mpumalanga.
Yeah. So I was there for about 5 weeks when the initial lockdown was happening. People are telling me not to fly. Okay. And then I went back to Joburg and I've been there since 2 days ago. So.
Okay. Ndegwa, it's okay to use data.
I think I should also.
No, you're fine. I can hear you clearly. I'm telling Ndegwa who's complaining. But again, Cape Town. So maybe you want to. Okay.
Are we good now?
Are you good now?
Yeah,
Fantastic.
I'm good.
Great. Okay, all right. So, you know what I always request of you? I'm not going to do it today because it's Leia who's going to do it. And I'm going to ask for that at the end so that I can cry nicely at the end. So, yeah, but can you start us off with a poem, which is not the poem that I generally request, but the other one? Yeah,
Why are
the
you gonna
other
do
ones,
me
any
like
of the
that?
other ones.
Why do you have to do me like that? Okay, I'll start us off with a poem. I thought
Okay.
I'd use this as a also as a way of saying these poems that I'm working on for the second book, which is what I'm working on at the moment. So I'll start off
Yes.
with yes. So I'll start off with this short one. Um, how many times did you have to click on cue, jukebox on demand? How many times did you slip your mouth into a straitjacket in an interview when they asked you to ululate with a pronunciation spread eagle over your bloodline's twisting grave every time you were asked, so is it Maykaba, Merkirby, Mukaba, Merkaba, Mikaba, and you, polite and unoffensive, Makeba, yes. So that's just a short poem to start us off.
Thank you. That is actually a very nice way to start us off. And the reason why it's a nice way to start us off is because, of course, we've all been dealing with Black Lives Mattering all over the world,
Yeah.
including on this continent, which you would think it would matter because we have African leaders, but yeah, isn't Duna for what you call it, for white capital. That's what happened when they're middlemen. Anyway,
Yeah.
so first of all, let's talk about this new web because you told me that it's going to be out later this year and you're busy editing. Tell us a little bit more about that. I'm very excited, by the way. I can't wait. Do you have a title yet first?
No. And like I'm envious.
A girl can, a
Yeah,
girl can
no.
go.
Yeah, I know. I'm envious of people who like come up with their titles before they've even written the book, You know those individuals. They're like, "Oh, the title of my
Yeah,
book is such and such,
yeah.
but
I
the
see
book is
some in this actual group actually. Layers like that,
Right.
and I think
Name and
Poma is like
shame."
that as well.
Oh yeah?
Hey, Vele. I'll name and shame.
Yeah, they must teach us their ways because, Hmm. So can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you
Oh,
hear
okay.
me?
Yeah. It keeps on doing that circle thing. So, I haven't been able to fully commit to this book in the last 3 years because, life has been so wild with everything that's been going on, and how it is. It's hard to travel and make money and also just like try and sit down and focus and finish a project. And so when a lockdown happened, I could come back to this project and kind of sit down and go, okay, I'm going to finish this book. And I started gathering it in Mpumalanga, and just recently, like a few weeks ago, sent it off to my editor. So it's still like at that stage of we're about to do the back and forth with the editor. I have a deadline that's around September, so I don't know if it's going to be out at the end of this year, but it's end of this year, beginning of next year. So that's where I'm at with that project.
Listen, sis, I don't mean to put any pressure on you. I'm not that type of person, but we've got towards the end of the year, we've got Ake Festival online, and we've got Abantu also coming at the end of the year. Details will be later. And so we cannot afford not to have this book. So
What are
do
the
it for your people.
what are these remarks about?
No,
You know?
I'm just saying, you need to get things done.
I hear you, but I'm also
Yeah.
trying to not rush this particular one because it is I also don't want to try and to kind of replicate a thing that I did with Collective Amnesia. I'm not trying
With
to like,
collective amnesia.
yeah. So I kind of want to let the book do what it needs to do, So I'm also not feeling any kind of pressure. And I don't know if that's because of COVID or lockdown things, but I'm feeling so like in a state of like no pressure, and I'm kind of so, yeah, this is the most laid back I've been in years. So it's nice.
No, this is good. All right, fine. I won't do the pressure. We will take it when it comes. But however,
Mm-hmm.
please know that the whole continent is looking forward to it and
Mm.
beyond.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now we talk about your other works.
Yes.
You have been busy with theater. You were
Yes.
directing Venus Hottentot versus Modernity, which I was really, really traumatized to have missed when it first showed. But I was so happy that I could catch it Abantu. And I think you
Oh,
guys did an
yes.
amazing job, you and Lebo and everybody who was involved. Tell us more
Mm-hmm.
about work on that piece of theater.
Yeah, I mean, I was brought in as a second director for that work because the work had
Mm,
already been in development. It was first developed at the Center for the Less Good Idea in Johannesburg, and then Lebu with Pamela Nomvete, and then later developed the work for like at Design Indaba. So when I had received the work, it was already like a child that had legs and hands and things. And I kind of, when I came in, I had to do the other work of kind of fleshing it out and you making it grow in ways that made sense. And that was interesting, like I'd never I think a lot of the times, like, it's so interesting that you ask this question because I never get asked this question in the literary space, which is strange because I think of theater as also like a form
theater
of
is written
literature.
word first before it's
It
anything
is.
else.
Exactly. So, I think like a lot of people kind of forget that I operate in that space. And actually it's that space that enables me to poet in many ways, or like allows me to actually have the space to write or to think about poetry in the ways that I do. But it was interesting with this particular project with Venus that I'd never worked with another poet in the theater space, but I'd also never
Mm.
worked with another person, a poet who's of Lebu's caliber. So that was an interesting um, dynamic. And then there was Anne Masina, who is the most. Did you hear Anne in
Her
that piece?
voice, her voice, her
Aibo,
voice. Can we take a
Aibo.
moment?
I was shook every
Wow.
day. I was shook every day. You would think
Hey.
that, after some rehearsals, you'd get used to it. No, I was shook every single day. And the vision was so clear, from the way that Pamela and the way that Lebu had written the work. The vision was clear. And so it kind of made the collaboration that much sweeter. But also during the same time, there was another work happening at the Market Theatre that I had written, No Easter Sunday for Queers, which started out as a poem, which is in Collective Amnesia. And then I got
Mm.
some other funding some few years ago, and over 2 years got to develop the play script, which then became No Easter Sunday for Queers, the play. And then also,
Mm.
like, I was very adamant, I didn't want to direct that. And so called upon an amazing director, Mwenya Kabwe. And so she did the direction for that. And I wanted nothing to do with that process. And so I was kind
Mm.
of in Joburg at that time, and those two projects were happening. And so that was interesting. Like, I was in the one space as a director, collaborator, and then I was in the other space as like a playwright, but a playwright who had nothing to do with the process of making that work, which is nice. Like, I feel like theater gives me a break from being a poet and poeting and thinking about poetry, and all that stuff.
The thing about it is, I was doing a play, and I was talking to a playwright, and suddenly somebody is like, there was a theater director in the UK who told me that they were doing No Easter Sunday for queers. And at that point in time, I hadn't realized that it was even going all there. So I just want to say, like, can we just take a moment to just talk about how amazing you have been doing, like your work being translated into like Danish and Spanish. Have you been translated, has Collective Amnesia been translated into any African languages, by the way?
No. And you know,
Why?
like I say no with a passion because motherfuckers, okay, no, let me tone down the volume of my response and be a civilized human being. No, and I, you know, like literature comes with its challenges here on the continent, you know, and also in this country. But a lot of people kind of in my sharing that, you know, Collective Amnesia has been translated, a lot of people are like, so when is it going to be translated in Xhosa? We need, like, you know, a Zulu translation. We need a sign language translation. And I'm like, okay, it's nice to sit and type that from the other side of the computer, but those things, those things need to be actualized, you know, and those things take labor and time and money.
Do you know what you respond to that? Respond to that the way I always respond. When I was doing Story Come, and I see Maimuna, who edited it, is actually in this forum right now, is I essentially just say to people, listen, if you want this translated into your language for your children, find the funding for it. And for the translator, for the printing, for the editing, we'll get it done.
Distribution,
so anytime anybody
that.
asks you that, please just tell them that.
Yeah.
Right. You've got a few questions here that I've been ignoring, but now I think I need to ask them.
Okay.
Yeah. So, okay. This one, I don't care what Remy said, so I'm going to ignore that. Okay, no, Maimuna wanted to know, why didn't you want to direct No Easter Sunday for Queers?
Because for a number of reasons. One, I wanted to, it's been 5 years since I left drama school, theater school. And when I'd left, I kind of entered the theater industry as a director. And I felt very insecure and uncertain about calling myself a playwright. Like it was a new thing. And actually, No Easter Sunday for Queers was the first play that I wrote. It's like sat down at a table and wrote by myself without bouncing off actors from start to finish. And so I really just wanted to test something. I just wanted to see if I could, one, claim being a playwright and test out what that meant and what that felt like. And then two, just also like hand over the script to someone to interpret the script in a way that wouldn't be loaded with my own filters, you know, because the story was kind of derived from a very personal poem, and I didn't want to layer that with my own filters and my own stuff. And I just wanted the story to be translated and to be made by someone who could just tell the story, man, like without any baggage, you know, because I would have just put all of my shit on there, you know. I just wanted to try it.
Was that poem about orgasming in the office?
No. So this one is about
all right. But you know, I used that poem, right? I used that poem in New Daughters of Africa in my short story.
Oh, really?
Yes, I quoted it. I thought I told you that.
No, you did not.
Yeah, totally.
And also,
I did.
Can I tell you what's weird? I've bought that book for I've bought that book for my sister. I've bought that book for my cousin. Do you think I have a copy? Do you think I have a copy now? No, I do not. And I don't know why we do that with books, you know, like, yeah.
No, but it means that we'll always go back to them. Ndego wants to know,
True.
do you find your writing and that side of you that is a thespian feeding directly off of each other?
Oh, definitely. Like, so when I went to study theater, in the beginning, it was quite, I thought in my mind for some reason that I had to keep the two ways of telling stories separate, that I couldn't be a thespian theater maker and a poet at the same time, that those two things had to live separately. And I think it was only when I graduated that I realized just how much being a theater maker made me a poet and vice versa. I think like, you know, the process of writing for me is a very visual one, and the theater is very much like a process of the visual. And so I think, yeah, I think that there are things about making theater and making work in the theater that have helped me to think through like poetry construction or language construction that has been yeah, interesting, and those two things kind of overlapping in many ways, for me at least.
Okay. I promised you that there would be like rowdy people in the audience. And that question that I told you would come seems to be here. You know, that poetry and
What is
cocaine
it?
question.
I'm so scared. I'm so
So,
scared.
okay, so it's coming from Remy, and he decided to couch it in almost polite language. I don't know why. And it comes like this: who hustles harder, Koleka the poet or Pablo Escobar, the cocaine drug lord?
What the fuck? You know, like when I you know, like when I watched that, I couldn't sleep for days after watching that. You know, like I was so fucking terrified. But you know, like, fuck, who hustles harder? Pablo was busy. You know, he was doing the most. He was doing the absolute most, you know?
You know, there's actually a response here. Troy says Koleka is greater than Pablo Escobar. Apparently, you push more lines.
What? Whose response was that? That was a bar, by the way. That was a bar. Jobs, Mike. Wow. Literally pushes more like, okay.
TJ, how are you doing? Right. Troy wants to know, how much of yourself do you put in your poems, and how do you decide what to hold back?
I think I put I don't think I hold back at all, you know. I think, and I think I know this because I mean, even writing the second collection now, I'm like, shit, I can't publish this shit, you know. Like I feel exposed, you know, and I think the minute you feel exposed is the minute you know that like your whole
you've given a lot,
that you are all up in those poems, you know. And I think
and how much did you have to edit out when you were doing Collective Amnesia?
It wasn't a straightforward process. Like, for example, No Easter Sunday for Queers, I put it in, and then notes came back from the editor, and I was like, actually, I don't think I can publish this book with this poem, and I took it out, and I was like, it's not coming back.
I don't mean to sound dirty or anything, but you said I put it in. Okay, let's go on.
Zuki, what? Anyway, I included it. I think I'm gonna have to be careful with my words. Yeah, so I think a lot of it has to do with where I am when I'm doing that particular edit. and on what scale my levels of fear and my levels of courage are. There are days when I feel courageous and I understand why that particular poem has to be in there. And then there are days when I am fearful. And I think, for a lot of, not just with me, with a lot of writers, a lot of the fear when writing, and particularly when you draw a lot from your own stories and your own stuff, is that the fear comes from who else you expose when you tell your own narrative, because sometimes our narratives include other people. And so I think like a lot of my fear comes from that, like, are there family members that I'm going to, expose and hurt while writing this poem? Are there ex-lovers, who were trash, who I'm going to expose and talk about when I publish this poem? And so sometimes the fear comes from that. But I think there's, is it Anne Lamott? It can't be Anne Carson. One of the Annes. There's a quote by Anne, I think it's Anne Lamott, who says, if people wanted you to write friendly about them or warm about them, then they should have behaved better, And I always try and keep that quote in mind, that like, it's not up to me to kind of shape the narrative in a way that makes the people who are implicated look or sound like they were not what they were when that narrative took place, So I just have to kind of write it the way that it is, and then people must deal with themselves,
Yeah, I think Da also said something similar to that in his memoir, Sometimes There's a Void, where he makes a statement about how if people don't want writers to write about them, maybe they shouldn't relate to writers or something. I don't know, something like that. Anyway, but we're joking. I think writers are wonderful people and you should relate to them because they need your stories so you can read them.
True.
Other people can read them. Ndego wants to know, theater related, what kind of director are you?
Ooh. I always have said, and I think that this is still true, that I'm a collaborator. I love to collaborate. I really, really, really do. And one of the ways of doing that is to devise. So I love to get into the space with like a line or an idea for something, and really like the script is not there at all. Like I'll come in, even if it's with the short story that I've written, and there's no dialogue necessarily, and I just throw out a bunch of exercises or games or workshops with the actors where we workshop the script from scratch, which is actually like an old South African model of making plays, essentially. I mean, this is how Abo Gibson and all those people made, which is what was known as workshop theater back in the day. I think I prefer that process just because I get to get in the room with a bunch of crazy actors and then kind of dream up this story from nothing, and we get to play. So I like to devise, I like to collaborate. Yeah.
A question from Troy. Are there poems you feel lose their essence when performed over when they're said on the page?
Definitely.
And I would probably ask also vice versa. Do you feel like sometimes you'll say something, something that's written that you'd rather people just read it instead of reading it on stage or performing them,
Yeah, a lot, actually. Like, there's a poem in Collective Amnesia called Promised Land. I think it's a way better performed poem than it is an on-page poem. And it's weird because when I when I read some of these poems now, because sometimes like you'll put a work out and half of the world will only catch up to that work much later. So I still get like requests to come and read from Collective Amnesia, and sometimes I'll open Collective Amnesia and I'll be like, damn, I don't believe in this poem anymore, and I wish it wasn't here in written form, because I feel like it should have stayed on the mic, and I feel like it should have just been a poem to be performed. But I also think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, like, I don't know if you know this or if a lot of people know this, but like I did not study creative writing and all of that stuff. Like I did not go the academic route into writing and into
No, I
publishing.
know.
Yeah, so I kind of came via open mics and performing. So a lot of the ways that I think about how poems should go on the page is through performance. And I think that that's also a theater thing too. But there are a lot of poems where I feel like, oh, this one should have just been performed, and actually this one should not be performed. Like sometimes, I'll read certain poems at a show, and I kind of feel like, oh, I should never read that again. Actually, it should just be read.
Yeah. No, I absolutely understand. In case you forgot, you launched Collective Amnesia in Nairobi.
I did.
So, yeah, we had some of these conversations back then.
I did. Can I tell you, that was so, man, you're Zuki. You've been in my life. Like that was so strange. Like before, like Uhanga was my publisher was not planning to publish Collective Amnesia not until April or May. I think the book was supposed to come out. Then I get this invitation from Zukiswa, people who are here, to come to Nairobi.
And then I sent him a message. I said to him, can you do advance copies? And I think he thought I was even crazy to even say do 100 copies.
Yeah. And then, and it, what? And then sips on flavored water. So then so that was the first time we launched the book, and I signed books till my wrist was blue.
And so everybody should.
Yeah. But that night was so good.
It was really absolutely amazing. And and just like Victor was also really cool. Like you guys were just like fire,
Yeah.
Anyway, Tandy West says, no question, I just think you are a very authentic writer that raises relevant and relatable issues that we face in this society. Thank you, Koleka. That's a shout out. Leia says, was there a time during the lockdown that you feared that the stage light will stay on forever?
That the stage light would stay on forever?
Yeah.
Like in what?
I don't know. Like you're gonna have to you're gonna have to elaborate
please elaborate on that question.
Please. Even me, I didn't get it. All right. Remy thinks this is an important question. I think it's not a question at all. But I'm gonna ask because what the people want, I give. And he says, Rupi Kaur, 20 marks. Go.
No, stop it. No. Fuck, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this with you. I'm not doing this with you guys. I would rather put a mouse trap on both of my nipples and drink a whole bottle of whiskey right now than answer that question. I will not.
Wow.
You know what? I will say this. And this is probably the only thing that I will say about Rupi and my contribution to that discourse, is that I think that there are lessons to be learned from Rupi and the way that she's gone about her career, about the marketing. and the selling of books. I think that there's a model there that we can all tear a page out of, and that's all I have to say on that. There's nothing else to comment on, really.
Remy wants to know, oh God, we want to know the correlative relationship between bad strokes from exes and fire bars.
From what? The correlation between what?
Between bad strokes, like bad strokes from your exes, and you're really your fire bars, your burning lines.
I know. So yeah, shame. They feature quite a bit, and they fuel my pen or my keyboard in ways that make for fire bars to happen. That's all I'm gonna say on that issue.
Yeah.
You know, like because so like the first year I had to deal with people trying to like draw links between certain poems and the people that they knew that I was dating, and so that was the one thing that I had to avoid. So yeah. Yeah, no shame. They feature, they contribute. They've helped me put together a bestseller, and that's, one of the best, if not the only best contributions that they've made in my life. So,
well, at least you got something from it.
Yeah, I mean, amongst other lessons, but yeah.
Okay, all right. So the question Leah was asking in simple English was there a time that you thought the theater would just stay closed forever, like people wouldn't be able to perform again on stage?
No, and I don't think that now either. I do think though that, and it makes me, at some point during the lockdown, it has made me anxious, and I'm sure for a lot of people, the realization that we will all probably be the last ones to kind of return to work, because we hear this thing of like, the economy being opened up, and, this sector can start going back to work, and, these measures have to be put in place for this sector to open up. And we are actually, to be honest, going to be one of the last. But the theaters are now open. But, like the way that the theater's set up, it's that experience requires of you to, one, go to the theater because you want to go and see that particular show, but to also sit in a dark room with strangers and then to experience this suspension of disbelief together, And I think that process of going on that imagination, of that journey of imagination, requires you to be in a particular state of relaxation and surrender, which I don't know if that's totally possible when you're wearing a mask. Now you have to be sensitized. Now your seat has to be sensitized. Now you don't know if and then the other, even if you limit it,
and you can't have a love scene, can you?
I mean, exactly. So now people are kissing through the mask. You don't know where the other 15 people who are sitting in the theater like, where have they been?
I'm sorry, I just visualize kissing through the mask, and it was like some other level of thing. Now there's one character on stage, he's a smoker, like now the cigar has to go underneath the mask like this, it's like crazy. No. It's like I have to say though, you know what? I have been like I have watched a performance on Zoom, interestingly enough, with some writers that I didn't even know could act. So Leia, who's here, and Maza, who I see is here as well. And yeah, and it was just absolutely amazing. And Nkoma did this old man voice, which was like, okay. But it was, I do understand what you're saying, because it could only ever happen in the safety of our homes on Zoom.
Yeah.
And if it had happened in where people were actually meeting because of the whole social distancing thing, it wouldn't have worked, because everybody would have had to like wear masks and keep their social distance. And how do you stab somebody when you are keeping a social distance,
Stop. But I would much rather us take the time to figure out what this means for the theater going forward. You know, like what does this, like, what opportunity does this present us with to rethink some of the ways that, you know, like we've been doing theater in the past, you know, rather than you know, trying to go back to like to the things that we
The
were
same old.
familiar with. Yeah.
Okay, another question from Deborah. So other than the stage and the written word, which other art form speaks a lot to your creative side? What? The stage and the written word is not enough?
Don't be
Okay,
like
but
that.
okay.
I hear what people are saying, but also I hear that question. And I hear that question because this probably is one of my biggest gripes, particularly with poets, is that poets don't necessarily engage with other forms of creative
Art.
expressions or art, you know. And so the worldview becomes quite narrow in a way. Like, you know, like the number of times I'll go to an exhibition, for example, and bump into poets. Like poets don't necessarily, I mean, not all, shame before people come after me, not all of you, disclaimer, but like it's very rare that like poets engage in other creative industries. I like I like the visual art space. I like architecture. I like to think about space. That I guess that's also like in a way like a theater thing. Like I have to think about space and think about creating worlds in the theater space. So I like to engage with architecture in that way, and because it helps me to think about that. What else? Music, like other people. I like to, even though I can't twerk, I like to twerk. I like to drink whiskey and dance to Rebecca Malope. You know, like it's just I like things that
Okay.
help me do. I like listening to gospel, like that Lusanda spiritual group gospel. It helps me to think through words, funny enough. I like dance, you know. Yeah, those are some of the things.
Remy wants to know, have you and Adele spoken about a collaboration featuring bad exes?
Which Adele? Adele.
Adele, who always sings songs about breaking up with people.
But why would I want to
Or
collaborate
who
with her?
always comes out with an album when she breaks up with somebody.
Yeah, but I think there are more interesting collaborations out there about people who talk about their exes, you know? Yeah. Adele is not
Right.
one of
Which gives us a follow-up question.
them.
Troy wants to know, if Beyonce asked to sample your poems, would your politics agree?
That is a good that is a good question. That is a good question because Babes is allergic to citation, you know, or explicit citation, and the ways that she has. I mean, I see now that in her upcoming visual album, she's used Ursa Daly Ward, the poet Ursa Daly Ward, or Ursa had posted on Instagram that she had contributed words to the project. And I'm interested to see how Beyonce has used Ursa's work, you know, which is kind of sits in a similar texture as Warsan Shira's work, which she used in Lemonade. But Warsan was completely physically, that is, and also vocally erased from that project. And so it was Beyonce speaking the words of Warsan as if it were her words, you know. And so I don't know. I actually don't. It would need a conversation because I think that I'm interested to know why she performs the kind of visibility and invisibility that she does with poets from the continent, actually, and why she does that, why she imposes her voice on the poetry. And then something about like the
Maybe
what
maybe because when you when you people speak English, you need subtitles.
Hey bro, where I can also Rodita. I can also Rodita and Rubuju. And then also like what's wrong with subtitles? She's fucking Beyonce. She could put subtitles all over that motherfucking project and people would be like, oh my god, like Beyonce revolutionized subtitles. Like Beyonce could put, I don't know, like subtitles in Times New Roman, okay? The size of 30, like the font could be 36, and people would feel like it's so radical and it's so bold, you know, like she can do anything. So please, no.
All right. These guys are just asking about what you think about with, you know, what do you think of the youth poems? Remy, I don't know what you mean by youth poem because Koleka is younger than you. So I don't know what you even mean with that question. Okay. Maimuna would like to know what are the new ways we can do theater. What do you imagine?
Rethinking the spatial dynamics between the audience and the actors, for one. You know, I think for years and years and years, and that's been influenced by the way, you know, that the Romans did it, the Greeks did it, and everyone who comes through school obviously learns this very particular way of understanding space and understanding the audience actor relationship to space, which, you know, there are, I'm not saying that there aren't any directors or playwrights or actors who haven't rethought that. Obviously, we've seen that with like, particularly with like site-specific work and avant-garde work that people try to fuck around with the way that they think about space. But I think that this really affords us the opportunity to really like think about what space means in the theater, you know, that it's not always like this frontal relationship that the audience looks forward, you know, and that the actors act, you know, for and towards the audience. That there's another kind of relationship that we can begin to have in the space and in the theater that's not, one, dependent on us being close, but also two, that's not dependent on us breathing on top of one another. You know, I think that there are interesting things there to think about, which a lot of people have been thinking about, but I think now it kind of also forces people in their own context to think about what that means and not to emulate what they've seen from this director in London or this director who did this play in New York, for example, but to think, what would a play that has to be socially distanced look like in Ghana, for example, or look like in Cape Town, South Africa, you know? Like, how do you negotiate all of those things? I think that's one of the things. But I'm also thinking about it because, you know, like COVID has...
It's the first time we're having to think about it.
Yeah. But also COVID has spun all of our brains upside down, you know, and we are all having to kind of try and rotate our brains like a Rubik's cube in ways that go, oh, okay, I thought this is what my career was based on. I thought this is what my livelihood was founded on. I thought. And so the things that we thought don't necessarily hold true anymore. And we have to.
TJ would like to know, how has travel affected your work or not?
Oh, well, the translations are the obvious thing that I can think about first, that it's made translation possible, but that it's also made translation not possible, you know, because there are things that cannot be translated Soonery, for example, in all of the translation is a thing that's come up over and over again. Like in that Mandela poem, like people want to know like how Soonery, like what is it, and the limit and the limitations with translation.
Can you just tell everybody here how you started that poem while we're in a taxi going to Abantu?
Oh yes, at Abantu. Was it the first Abantu festival?
It was the very first one, and then you just I don't know. We saw this big billboard with Mandela, and then you were like,
we went to the
conversation.
But also we went to the museum, the house, and then when we got there, there were all these white people. But also the way that they look at his portraits and the way that they gather around his artifact with awe and like such a love. I was just like, guys, I want someone to love me like that, And so we had this discussion in the taxi, and that's how that poem came about.
The poem started.
I don't even know that Tando knows this, by the way.
I think it does. I think it does. We're almost out of time, so I'm gonna ask you. Can you do? You know what? Do that poem, man. You know
which one? No, Zuki.
The Mandela one. Come on, man. We're almost out of time.
Okay, wait, I don't even know where. Oh,
and the people will kill me if there's no water.
No, water's too long. Water will end this whole situation.
Okay, all right. Okay, do the Mandela one then.
Okay. 1994, a love poem. I want someone who is going to look at me and love me the way that white people look at and love Mandela. Someone who is going to hold onto my memory the way that white people hold onto Mandela's legacy. A lover who will build Robben Island in my backyard and convince me that I have a garden and fresh air, a rainbow and freedom. A TRC kind of lover. You don't know love until you have been loved like Mandela. You don't know betrayal until you have been loved like Mandela. You don't know fuckery until you have been loved like Mandela. You don't know msunery until you have been loved like Mandela. And this is one of the many residues of slavery, being loved like Mandela.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Are you gonna give us something from your new work before you go?
Yes.
Your work in progress?
Let me.
Okay.
Yes. So all of this is still to go through many edits, but because you are privileged and such, I will share this with you.
I promise when the sky opens up, I'll arrange for your first launch again.
Oh yes, I accept. In fact, say no more.
You heard it here first.
Europe asks if it can touch my hair. Backspace. Europe touches my hair. My braids flung across its borders. It pats me down in Dutch. Colonialist pencil test invasion. Yes, sir. Ena. No, sir. Raised arms and parted hips. I've mastered how not to look angry. Threatening. A visa with an expiry date and a return ticket proves I will perform and leave. I will sign books, careful to be understood, careful to hear and spell each of their names correctly while they mispronounce and mutilate mine. I will smile with the injury of my ancestors still hemorrhaging on my face. I will gather my braids back from the blue-eyed official, say, Dankische, and move towards the carousel. In Europe or overseas, you are the sickness and the cure. In Europe or overseas, the platform, the stage, saves those who know how to save themselves.
Nice. I don't think you actually need much editing of that, really. I really enjoyed that. Like, and I
Yeah.
felt it. I have performed when I've been in those airports.
Yay.
Yo, sis.
Yay. You have to do a whole song and dance. Like, here's my ticket. I will leave. I promise you, you know?
I
And
have
the
to tell
song
you
and dance
what,
doesn't
right?
end there. Mm-hmm.
Once I was coming, Wits had like a function, and they'd given me a T-shirt for the function because I'd gone there, and the T-shirt was written "Sex Actually," and
Mm-hmm.
and then I had to fly to Denmark, and when I landed, you know how you always get randomly selected. I was randomly selected.
Mm-hmm.
So then they asked
Mm-hmm.
me, so what are you coming to do here? And then I showed my T-shirt, and I was like, "Sex Actually," you know, because I was so hurtful, I was done, you know. And I think at that point in time, they had nothing left to do than to laugh.
Yeah, because
Anyway,
you know, like, yeah, you know, it's a
yeah,
frequently asked question, you know. So,
you know, like
what are
what
you
do you
here?
think
What are
I'm
you
coming
here
to
to
do?
do? What are you here to do? When are you fucking off back to wherever you came
Yeah.
from? You know? Yeah.
And you're like, you put me through such a rigorous visa process. Why do you assume that I'm gonna stay? But anyway, my sis, let me talk to you on the side because we're gonna lose you, and we don't want to do that. We want to save
Yeah.
this file. It has been
Mm-hmm.
such a pleasure and such a delight having you on this platform.
Thank
I love you so
you.
much. Thank
I
you.
love you so much. Thank you for having me, and thank you for everyone who joined.
Thank you to everyone who joined. And tomorrow at 12 GMT, we've got Raul Jameli, and he will be moderated by Kelvin Adanchede. And then in the evening, we're going to have Mark Alexander, who will be moderated by the delightful Hemley Boom. So thank you, everyone, and have a good night. Thanks, Koleka.
Thank you, Zuki.